as we read this, just keep in your mind the suffering that people are going through that makes them want to consider voluntary assisted dying. Mark 14, 1 to 11. Now the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard came. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "This waste perfume could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. Poor you will always have with you, and you can help them any time you want, but you'll not always have me." She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over.
Good morning, friends. My name's Steve. I'm one of the pastors here of Renew. It's really great to be with you here this morning as we begin our campaign, The Uprising. I'm going to pray and then we're going to do it. Gracious Father, thank you so much for Jesus, that he sees our death coming and is willing to bend and spend and spend to make sure that we're taken care of. Father, as we look at this bit of your word today, we pray that you would speak to us, that we would not harden our hearts, and that as we listen, you would transform us. And ask all this for Jesus' sake. We're calling this campaign The Uprising for a couple of different reasons. You'll see some of them as we go. This campaign begins with the fear of a riot and ends with women running afraid. Revolution is in the air and assassination is on the cards. But to start the story, a domino needs to fall. And we're going to see that domino fall in our passage today. Today we're going to see three things. The slavery of Judas, the freedom of the woman, and gospel freedom for us. Okay, verses 1 to 11, the bit that Heidi just read for us. So you would have noticed kind of a story sandwich. So there's the two pieces of bread, the bit about Judas, and then there's a jammy layer in the middle, the kind of 3 to 9 bit, telling the story of the woman and her bottle of perfume. So we're going to look at all three of those bits today. So verses 1 and 2 say, you might want to open it up again if it's closed. So now the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away. And the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. Not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. That might sound like a bit of a stark way to begin a story. If you've never read the Bible before, if you're here today and you're exploring the things of Jesus, and we always have people who are in that category, so you're very welcome. It's lovely to have you. It just seems like a strange way to parachute into this story. I once had the privilege of reading the Bible with a person who was an international student and had literally no experience of the Bible or any of this story ever before. It was like completely new. It was fascinating. Like never heard of Jesus, but never like had no kind of awareness of any of this stuff. Um, uh, it, it just wasn't part of their upbringing. As we were reading through this very book, Mark's Gospel, um, this rumble starts to emerge in the story. The religious elite, the political establishment, very early on decide that they can't stand Jesus. Which seems so strange because what's not to like? What's not to like? This guy can heal the sick. He can calm storms. He taught with such cut through that it felt like he was just speaking to you. Still feels like that as you read it. Surely you'd want to keep someone like that around. But that's the funny thing about a bright and beautiful light. Been in like an airport bathroom or something like that that is just way overlit, and you look at yourself in the mirror. Every crease, every clogged pore, every blemish and discoloration is just there, right in front of you, on display. Um, it's inescapable. Um, some people appreciate the light. It shows them what needs fixing, gives them a chance to change. Others despise light. It makes them feel angry and ugly. And when they want to believe that they've concealed all their blemishes. Uh, by chapter 12 of Mark's Gospel, they are convinced that Jesus intends to rise up against them, and they begin to look for ways to fell this tall poppy. Passover was coming. It was only a few days away. This is the most significant festival of the year for Jewish folk. The city of Jerusalem was a bit like, I often think of it as a bit like Byron Bay. You know how Byron Bay like swells when there's a festival on. Splendor in the Grass is not anymore, but it grew two, three times the population for that time. Jerusalem, on Jerusalem, the Passover weekend, it'd be three, four, five times the size that it usually was in terms of population, as people from all over the world would travel for pilgrimage to celebrate the festival of God's rescue together. So the problem, um, the place was crawling with people. Jesus was wildly popular. Throngs of people hung on his every word. How on earth do you quietly arrest a guy in that situation without causing a riot? How on earth do you do it? So in verses 10 and 11, we get their answer. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this, and they promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand them over. This is one of the most heartbreaking and appalling acts you can probably imagine. Judas was he was one of the 12. He had privileged access to Jesus. He was there when the legion of demons left the man in the Decapolis. He was there when the sick woman was healed, when the dead girl was raised. He knew. He knew that this guy was sinless. You can't hang out with a person for years and not notice that they're just different to you. They don't operate on the same motivations that you operate on. He was never self-serving, never deceitful, never overbearing, always giving, always loving. Judas was a friend of Jesus. And what does this friend do? He accepts money for the betrayal of Jesus. Matthew's biography tells us exactly how much he accepts. 30 pieces of silver. 30 pieces of silver was the going rate should you accidentally kill another person's servant. That was like the compensation that you paid. The minimum price for a man. Judas was willing to trade away Jesus for the least amount of money he could have possibly expected. Jesus was worth more to Judas, dead than alive. Why? What we see in Judas is a mindset. It's a heart set, actually. It's a heart set that all of us, to a degree, have bought into. It's a heart set that sees the world and everyone in it instrumentally. That is, we see the people who are in front of us as a means to our own ends. With every relationship we find ourselves, doing a kind of cost benefit analysis where we're trying to work out whether the gains are going to be worth the initial investment. Our city is built on that mindset. It starts at school and we never grow up. I've told this story several times, but Andrew, who I was mentioning just before, he used to be the director of St. Mark's, which is uh, local theological college in town. And he was at a dinner. This is maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And he was sat, like they were all sat on tables at this dinner. And the woman he was sat next to had like positioned herself so that she had her back to him the entire dinner, just talking to the other people on the other side of the table. And Andrew was fine with this. But then somewhere between, you know, dessert and the end of the night, um, uh, someone said, "Oh, such and such, this is my friend Andrew. He's the director of St. Mark's." And she turned around and she looked at him and she said, "Oh, you're important." And then tried to make small talk. And that's horrifying, right? She's just saying the quiet part out loud, though, right? We all do that. We all do that. Um, we size people up. We assign them value. There's people still watch the TV show Community. Hands up if you've seen the TV show Community. Okay, good. Right. I'm gonna carry on with this illustration then. Community is a great show. I don't know what streaming service is on at the moment, but I'm thinking of going back and watching it again sometime soon. There's an episode of that show that I love, where these app developers give everyone in this community college in the US an app called Meow Meow Beans that lets you assign a value for everything. Um, you have every person gets a 1 to 5 score. 1 to 5 meow meow means, and that's based on the votes of other people. The votes of the fives are worth more than the votes of the fours, and so on. And within 2 days, the community college becomes this dystopian hellscape where, as a kind of caste system emerges between the fives and the rest. Abed, who's the show's kind of neurodivergent hero, is my favorite character. Um, uh, it says, Meow Meow Beans takes everything subjective and unspoken about human interactions and reduces it to explicit objective numbers. I've never felt so alive. Uh, and all that episode is doing is making fun of how we live every day. Um, these relationships, my friends, my faith, I'm only really in them because I can calculate I can figure out the benefit of and what that will result for me. Judas was saying the quiet bit out loud. But friends, this mode of life is utterly poisonous, right? We do this all the time. Uh, we do it to one another, but far worse, we do it to God. We say, God, I am all in. I am all in. As long as my life maintains the trajectory that I want it to, as long as I don't have any setbacks, as long as everyone is impeccably nice to me at church, then you get to be my Lord. But as soon as life doesn't go my way, as soon as something gets uncomfortable at church, I'm out of here. I'm done. Um, the Bible has a word for that kind of faith. It's called sin. It's called sin. It has the power to destroy our lives, but there is another way of being, another way to see, another way to live your life, and we see it in the life of the woman. In stark contrast to Judas, the story introduces us to an unnamed woman. Where Judas had been an absolute insider, this woman was an outsider. We don't even know her name. Judas was sitting at the table calculating what Jesus was worth to him, but the woman gives up all that she is. Look at verse 3. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Now, it's really interesting. The grammar of verse 3 is very odd in the original. So I don't know if you knew this, but Jens didn't speak English. We have a translation of the ancient Greek. And the grammar of it is very odd in the original. It kind of piles up the adjectives. It says literally, A woman came with an alabaster jar of perfume, nard, pure, expensive. Now, what does that sound like when I say that? Doesn't it sound like someone's lizard brain taking over? Uh, like someone's heart tentacles are just kind of wrapping around something that they find beautiful. See, nard, then as now, really only grows in Nepal, high up in the Himalayan mountains, even today. Um, uh, you had to find the plant, you had to crush the root, and make perfume out of it. And let's be Nepal that's a long way from Jerusalem um, on foot. So you've got all the travel costs, and added to that the purity of the perfume. It's hasn't been cut with anything else. This was an incredibly expensive object. It's in an alabaster jar, which is a kind of soft rock that people would carve in all kinds of beautiful designs into. The jars would be sealed shut, and the stone was very slightly porous, and so the contents gradually seeped out of this jar. If you wanted to smell good, you'd either kind of rub the stone or uh, you wear the jar as necklace. It's likely for those people that at that dinner, this was the most expensive item any of them had ever seen with their own eyes. It cost a lot, but it also meant a lot. This may have well been a family heirloom. Anna's grandpa, now deceased, once showed me something. He knew that I was a student of history and thought I might get a kick out of this. He had been a bomber in the Second World War. And as an Australian, flying in a Dutch squadron over in Europe, which meant that he was one of the few Aussies who were flying in Europe. All the crew in this squadron of bombers were issued maps of Europe. So if they fell behind enemy lines, they could try and find their way out. Way back. The maps were made of paper because they wanted to reduce the kind of rustling noise, and so they printed these things on silk um, and on both sides, they were double-sided. Uh, they were really expensive at the time to make. They only issued a few hundred of these. Most of the maps got really dirty because of the grease from the planes, but somehow Bill's was in immaculate condition. Um, and he still had it, and he showed it to me 6 decades after the war. The War Memorial has one and a half of these, um, and they're in nowhere near as good condition as Bill's one. Um, when he took it out and showed me, my lizard brain kicked in, um, and I knew that what I had in my hands was something absolutely magnificent, um, a treasure. It was like someone had handed me the crown jewels. I became inarticulate at the sight of this thing. That's how the disciples in this room felt when the woman came in with this item. If that doesn't work for you, if you're not into maps, that's okay. Let me try this. This picture, yeah. This is a picture of Clive Christian's Imperial Majesty. The bottle's design is meant for royalty with a collar made from 18 karat gold. There's a 5 carat diamond stuck on top. Each bottle is delivered to your home by a man in a Bentley. It'll set you back a cool 215,000 Australian dollars for a 50 ml bottle. Perfume, pure, expensive. I want to go to there. Um, what is going on when we have responses like that? And when our lizard brain set in, when our hearts wrap themselves around something we find desirable. In part, those things that we own and we love come to own us, don't they? Um, uh, just ask. We've just done a renovation, and our house, our bathrooms are all kind of done, and uh, there's a care that we're encouraging our children to have in the new spaces, shall we just say? Um, uh, those things kind of come to own us over time. Um, uh, the things that we wish for come to own us. Now, how is this woman different? What does she do? What does she do with this treasure? She breaks the seal and she pours it out all over the head of Jesus. It's crazy. Why would someone do something that reckless? Well, we get an answer from Jesus in verse 6. Notice he doesn't say, verse 6, leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She's done something really practical for me. Um, no, it was deeply impractical what she did. He doesn't say she did something useful. He says she did something beautiful. Um, what she's done hasn't got a clear utility. Um, she does it just for the beauty of it. The beauty of Jesus demanded a beautiful response. Um, her beautiful act is done simply in response to all the beauty of what Jesus had done for her. See, when you understand the gospel, it changes you, it transforms you, and the way you view the world. Even things that you most treasure uh, pale in comparison to the Lord Jesus. They lose their grip on our hearts when we see his astonishing beauty. You begin to want what he wants for the world. The beauty of all that he is the benefit that you want in your life. Verses 4 and 5 say, some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, this waste of perfume. It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor. And they rebuked her harshly. Now, Jesus is not against caring for the poor. I just feel like I need to say this. Uh, uh, Margaret Thatcher used this passage as a way of justifying not caring for the poor in her own government. True. Jesus is not against caring for the poor. In fact, he goes on to command it. He says, "The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want, but you will not always have me." They're missing the entire point. The most beautiful thing in history is happening before their very eyes. The most astonishing act of poverty alleviation is eating dinner with them. God the Son has become God our brother. Though he was rich, he became poor so that through his poverty we might become rich. The greatest act of liberation in the history of the world is 2 days away. And they are indignant about someone spilling some perfume. The woman was not concerned about the return on investment in that moment. She's totally self-forgetful. The things she desired don't own her anymore. She's free because she's enraptured by someone she finds more beautiful. Jesus doesn't shame this woman. He doesn't chastise her for her wastefulness. That's for the critics. Why? Think about it. What she's saying the thing that everyone in this room prized was worthless compared to him. Anna and I used to direct these HSC study camps in New South Wales for Year 12ers in the HSC. If you are a teenager and you're living in the ACT, you're in the land of milk and honey because the HSC is terrible and it destroys people's lives. And here you are in beautiful Canberra and you don't have to worry about any of that. But we would run these camps to give people a bit of time to study and also we tell them about Jesus while the camps are going on. And at about day 4 of the conference, I would always let slip that I've never opened my HSC results. I've still got the envelope in my filing cabinet to be opened upon my death. Um, uh, and to them, this was insane. How did I not value the thing that was completely absorbing their entire life? How did I not value the thing that was of supreme importance to them? How could I not bow down to the goddess Atar? How could I not care about how many meow meow beans I earned? It's stuck in their throats. For Judas, this act was a straw. Her freedom sticks in his throat. It made him angry enough to kill the King of Glory. What is going to free you from the same heart set that Judas clung to? Well, for that, we need the gospel that the freedom that the gospel brings. Just like they failed to see the beauty of this woman's act, they failed to see the beauty of his coming act that she was preparing him for, his coming death. Uh, can you fix your mind's eye on the cross? Just try and picture it for a second. Picture Jesus up there. What are you looking at when you see that? You're watching God pour out his life, infinitely costly, pours out his life like a drink offering. He does this because it's a beautiful act, not so he could get a return on investment. He did it to get you. He did it to get you. And where the woman poured herself out for something infinitely worthy, Jesus poured out himself for people who are utterly unworthy. He did it to make you his beauty. When you see the beauty of what he's done, someone who gave himself to make you smell like roses before him, when you grasp that, when you are captivated by it, it changes the way you work, changes your relationships, your investments. It begins to delete the Meow Meow Beans app from your heart. Now there's no more viewing God for the utility he provides, but for the beauty he is. Now there's no more viewing colleagues as steps to aid your upward mobility, but as people who need the same freedom that you are moving into the world with. Now there's no more viewing the poor as an annoyance and a drain on your resources, but as people who are people you most identify with, because Jesus came for those who are willing to receive his grace humbly, while the indignant and the proud he sends out into the dark. Friends, fix Jesus in your mind. Beauty has been poured out all over you so that you can live lives of beauty. Let me pray. Gracious Lord and loving Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the example of this woman who, at a critical moment, did something that showed us how astonishingly beautiful Jesus is. Father, would you please teach our hearts to treasure him and so be able to treasure other people? And we ask that for Jesus' sake. Amen. Friends, we've got time.